Hey, I'm Nick Carpenter. I'm the VP of Art and Cinematic Development over at Blizzard Entertainment, and today I'm super excited to show you guys something that we don't really get a chance to show a lot of people, which is the behind the scenes, the iterative process that we take on at Blizzard. And we go through a lot of different ideas, a lot of iteration when we're coming up with these cinematics. And normally the world doesn't necessarily get a chance to see this stuff. This stuff doesn't make it in the art books, doesn't make it on our website. So this is a really cool opportunity for you guys to really peer inside our process, see a lot of the cool designs that actually didn't make it. And some of them are really, really cool and dear to my heart. And sometimes they end up on the cutting room floor, and that's just part of the process. But in this particular piece, you guys get a chance to see it. So I'm super excited for you guys to check it out.
Malthael.
Our task here was to use this cinematic to really establish the villain.
I think that any good writer would agree that storytelling is just plain hard.
Storytelling in Diablo is very tricky. None of that is an excuse for a bad story. You get 3 or 4 really opinionated people in a room, and we shout at each other, and then we figure out something that we're all excited about.
The longer process we have for character design, the better off we're going to be. When you're really rushed and you don't have a chance to do that development, the modeling team, for example, doesn't get a chance to give input to the concepting team, and the concepting team may not have a chance to give input to the director or to the game team.
If there's any changes or if there's any new ideas or good ideas, let's find out at the beginning, before we start modeling, before we do animation,
That process can be daunting, but that's where the flavor comes out, As we were conceptualizing the Diablo 3 expansion set, we had a number of lingering plot threads that we wanted to tie up. We wanted to continue the chronicle of the Nephilim hero that you played in the core game, and we wanted to kind of just see what was happening with the rest of the family.
We had to establish our villain for the piece in a way that felt natural and didn't take away the accomplishment of what you had just done, which was to kill Diablo.
Our initial thinking was that Imperius would be our bad guy.
The original plot of the cinematic was basically Tyrael and some crusaders have shown up at this Tomb of Rakkus.
Tomb of Rakkus itself is a Nephilim structure underground. It's the resting place of Rakkus, the champion of the Zakarum, which has now been retooled, so to speak, as a hiding spot for the Soul Stone, just because of its remote location, and the only hope to keep the Soul Stone from getting into the wrong hands really is to hide him.
Tyrael has decided that it's just too dangerous to keep it in heaven. They think everything's going to be fine, and then Bamf Imperius shows up and changes the whole equation. Imperius basically called Tyrael out for what he considered his foolishness.
You sacrificed everything to be one of them. Was it worth it?
And then he proceeded to slay every single guard in the room and beat the heck out of Tyrael for a bit. And what finally happened was that just before he was about to claim the Soul Stone, Tyrael throws out a line, "I do not fear death." And Imperius says something to the effect of, "Well, we'll see." And so this was our opportunity for the introduction of Malthael, the Angel of Death. So Malthael shows up, takes all the souls of the guards in the room, and then together he and Imperius leave Tyrael bleeding on the floor and take the Soul Stone. We started out was sort of a brother against brother idea. You had Tyrael and Imperius, 2 awesome characters that had all this back history. There's a painting that initially ignited some people's imagination that was this painting of Imperius with bloodied gauntlets. And it's just a very arresting idea. We started to think about, Imperius is going to come for the Black Soul Stone. That's the mechanic that we're going for with the plot. But what if he also takes some time to really exact vengeance on Tyrael, who he considers to be a traitor? This is the angel that ripped off his wings and joined the mortals. And so it just seemed natural that Imperius would take a moment to really relish in Tyrael's demise.
We did want to almost kill Tyrael, or make him to the point where he was almost dead. And most of the cinematics or the storyboards at that point contained an enormous amount of blood that was going to be included in the cinematic. He was going to be bleeding, possibly from his nose or even his mouth or other parts of scrapes or cuts on his skin. We need to make that not only look as realistic as possible, but also blend into the performance that we were trying to get from the character, an emotional performance that was going to be very, very hard to maintain.
From a technical standpoint, we looked at doing the blood in a couple different ways. We could involve the effects team and do it as a fluid sim splashing onto the metal, but there's a lot of computation to this. There's a lot of iteration time that's lost.
But in that instance, I think it created the right level of emotionality that we were seeking.
We wanted Imperius to look a little different in this expansion than we wanted in the first game. He definitely has undergone some damage. The Heaven's Gate absolutely collapsed on him.
So his armor, we want to progress in the sense that it had all this wear and tear, all this dent. That was one thing we were playing off of, and we were playing off of how his personality was reflected in his armor.
And we wanted that to echo the thematic truth, that Valor had turned to wrath, and that there was more math going on inside that suit of armor than just, the power of evil itself, is that his whole being was really turning and transforming.
And Imperius by nature is a very reflective character with giant bright wings. He's an angel, and when we looked at it from a lighting standpoint, we're like, okay, how do we get a very bright character to sit into this world now that is supposed to be full of shadow and darkness?
There was an idea that we had that we were very fond of, that when Imperius reaches out to claim the Soul Stone, when he touches it, you would see the hint of a transformation. The idea is that it would be very dark, he would be largely a silhouette, and as he touched it, that silhouette, all the points on his helmet would just elongate slightly.
So some spiky things coming out from the shoulders, and then the face or the helmet started to deform.
Sort of much more demonic looking. His eyes would slant inward. He'd get much more of a sinister look on his face. We didn't have a lot of time to accomplish it, but we definitely wanted to suggest that it was going to start happening.
One of the challenges that we had to deal with was, why doesn't Imperius just kill Tyrael? That was a question that just kind of kept popping up.
He can't kill Tyrael. We need Tyrael in the story. Tyrael's a very important character in the universe.
It was something that we just danced with for a long time.
Brother, why?
Imperius was going to have this second in command who was helping him out, and that was this mysterious angel of death, Malthael. But having two villains in a 4-minute cinematic really was dividing our focus, and it sort of was like Imperius and Malthael were competing with each other for who could be the coolest.
That was the other thing. We were introducing this great villain, this great new character, Malthael, the Angel of Death. So sinister looking, really awesome. He has a great entrance, and then he basically has nothing to do after that. He stands there for half the cinematic and just nods his head or something, And that kind of stuck in our craw too. It was just like, gosh, he's such a good character. I wish there was a payoff for him in this cinematic.
Imperius was sort of stealing his thunder. And we really talked about the motivations between the two characters, and we felt that Imperius's motivations were very similar to Malthael's.
And that's where we decided maybe Imperius really isn't required. Maybe he was less of a character than we thought.
Maybe we pull Imperius and we make it Malthael, the Angel of Death, come to claim the Black Soul Stone. All of a sudden, everything just kind of fell into the proper place, because Malthael doesn't have anything personally against Tyrael. Tyrael is descended purely from angels. He has no demon in him like all the residents of Sanctuary. So Malthael's goal is to wipe out humanity, but it is not to wipe out Tyrael. Tyrael is like a bug to him, basically. It just made much more sense that Malthael would maybe have a moment with Tyrael, since they know each other from back in the day, but ultimately he just discards him like a rag and goes on to claim the Soul Stone. Once this idea of Malthael becoming the main villain came into play, those problems were solved, And you just had to look at the value of that and say, we should make this change. And we got very excited about the idea of, an expansion with the Angel of Death as our big bad.
The reason we brought the Horadrim back from the practical aspect was simply that we have Tyrael in a tomb and this villain shows up and we want to see this villain kick ass and kill a lot of people. So who's he going to kill? And who would Tyrael be there with? Is it a bunch of angels? I mean, the angels are impressive and great characters, but I don't think we would feel quite that menace from Malthael if we see him kill a bunch of angels. And so the question is, well, who are these guys? At one point we talked about having them be Crusaders, which was the new class that's being introduced in the expansion. And, how great is that? We get to see the Crusaders in action in a cinematic.
That didn't last very long because when we realized that Malthael was going to slay every single Crusader in the room, it started to seem like not a very cool way of introducing a new player class. So we backed off of that, and for a while they were just guards, anonymous guards. And then the idea of them becoming Horadrim emerged.
This was an order of human warrior mages that Tyrael created long ago to help him do things on Sanctuary, like hunt down the primevals and all of this. So we realized he could restart the order, and it just seemed to make sense that he would get these mortals back on his side and help him with the Black Soulstone and finding a place to hide it.
Tackling the Horadrim as a kind of an emergent faction again in the franchise was interesting from the visual standpoint. It kind of felt like we needed something a little other than a bunch of kooky-looking wizards. We needed kind of guys that had more of a martial feel, like they could, throw a punch as much as they could throw a fireball.
We had these reference images they gave us, and there were these mage characters who had lion-based Horadrim Guard armor. And he had this whole lion head and the paws, the mane, the whole 9 yards. So from there, it's how it progressed into what you see in the game now.
The Horadrim went through many different revisions where we started to pull off that armor, leave various portions of the armor on just for a little bit of show, but became much more looking like sort of like a wizard or a warrior wizard, has some sort of deep dark secrets, but isn't as armored up and beefy as the original character.
They would all be very tough, badass guys, but of course, fighting the Angel of Death is pretty impossible.
Malthael is a very interesting character to me. What we usually do is making everything bulky and broad and overly muscular. This time we have kind of a gaunt guy that is just a little bit unusual for how we usually treat our villains. And I thought it was really cool to have him, sort of hunched over with a little bit of a androgynous element to him.
He has a mix of cloth and metal that we haven't really gone that deep into before. Tyrael has cloth, but it's not so alive as what Malthael's robe is like. And the fact that Malthael doesn't really have a face, it lets the viewer kind of imagine what he thinks the character is.
Just the cold, calculated nature. So very deliberate movements, sort of only necessary movements. That posture whenever he raises the blades, not to read as outright menacing, just sort of discomforting, I guess you would say.
He's more of a creepy villain vibe. So he has like this elegant, evil, ominous villain, nature to him.
His wings, while they emit light, it's very subtle light and they're more bat-like. His black cloaks and just the more neutral chrome almost. So Malthael is probably the best case scenario as far as an angel to go into this environment.
He who was wisdom is now death.
As the story team was sketching these frames out, we weren't really feeling the character, understanding that he's death, but not feeling that fearsome aspect of him. Perhaps he really doesn't have to say anything, but at the same time, they had to invoke a lot of fear in us, and I always feel like the less is far more.
And suddenly you were able to read into, the absence of his communication all sorts of things that this guy might be thinking. It simply made him a more dynamic character the less we tried to overbake his communication.
And that's where we came up with, no one can stop death. And, it's just so well played by the actor that I think it really carries the day.
The Nephilim will stop you. No one can stop death.
So Malthael has this power to kill people from a distance and to basically suck their souls out of their body. First step would be the body would mummify and kind of dry up, shrivel up like a raisin, and then the soul would leave the body as the Horadrim would fall to the ground.
During that pre-production process we worked on so hard, the effects department helped design some of the ideas in the game, and the soul-sucking effect is the primary example of this. The director's words were, I want to see something different, something we've never seen before. We looked at many of the different types of footage that we've seen in some of the blockbusters that have come out in the last couple of years, and we tried to step away from that or come up with some variant that was different. In this case, Eric Grimmenstein, one of the artists here on our staff, came up with a great idea, which is the soul-sucking effect as you see it now.
I don't even think Mark realizes this, but the soul-sucking effect is actually based on something in D3. There's a character that they call Shadestalker, or it's also called the Shadow Vermin. Basically, this is a guy, like Smokey type guy that crawls on the ground and attacks you. I really like that guy in the game. It's one of those kind of minor characters that never was a big thing. I've actually gone through 3 different techniques for how to form the soul itself. A lot of that has been just playing with different ways of emitting the particles, different ways of controlling how they move around and sticking versus just flying around and, being loose fluid.
He had really done his homework, and his basic idea was that we would treat it more as a fluid sim than a vapor sim, which was very exciting just because it was different. What you'd expect if you're going to see a ghost effect is a lot of mist and gas and, vapor and all that sort of thing. But the idea that you could also incorporate a fluid quality to that so that the soul actually gets ripped out of the body of the person, and as it falls, it actually splashes on the ground and then reforms itself as it's being dragged back towards the Angel of Death. It just seemed like a fresh take on that idea. Tyrael's role in the cinematic was challenging because we wanted him to be himself. We wanted him to be heroic, but we had to acknowledge the reality that he is a mortal facing angels, and that's where the idea of saving one of his guys emerged.
He sends him to find the player character.
Go! Find the Nephilim!
And the unspoken part of that line is, while I stay here and die so that you can get away to alert the Nephilim.
People were, a little taken aback that we had written into the plot that he had kind of sacrificed his power on behalf of mankind, and that he would literally become immortal and, take on mortal flesh and failings and weaknesses to better identify with them. But I like the idea that we finally had a heroic character that wasn't necessarily the hardest hitting guy in the neighborhood and was willing to provide that kind of personal sacrifice in order to help the player characters win, and defeat evil.
Story development is work and more work, and it's a lot of iteration.
You have to find a way to merge all these disparate components that everybody's really geeked up about. What's cool is when you put those ideas together, finding ways of fusing things that you didn't suspect you could find, or seeing how ideas kind of meet in the middle. You go, whoa, those actually are really complementary. I think we all look at it and go, yeah, it's meeting all my needs, is geeking me up, I get it, I'm feeling it. And when you've achieved that across all of our leads and all the main stakeholders, I think you wind up with something very, very special.
It's something that helps us explore the space, so to speak, to allow us to find what we really want to do.
As we went through that phase, we started seeing things that worked really well. We saw character designs that worked well and character designs that did not work well. And in the middle of that process, we also found story bumps, things where the story wasn't flowing as smoothly as we wanted to.
with Blizzard in general, we go through massive iterations. Iterations after iterations. When I talk about the changes in the Horadrim Guard, the changes in Imperius, the changes in Malthael.
Run.
The thing that's very cool is that we're not afraid to say, this isn't the right design.
Sometimes the thing that you love the most is the thing that ends up on the cutting room floor. I think every filmmaker and editor knows that, the thing that you started out with, the little nugget that you thought, oh, this is the heart of my piece, almost always ends up being tossed out at some point. Because you find something better, you find something that's more organic, that makes more sense, that solves more problems. And sometimes the story, if you let it, will lead you to some unexpected places. That's usually where the good stuff is.
Hi, I'm John Haidt, production director here at Blizzard on Diablo 3, Reaper of Souls.
And I'm Josh Mosquera, the game director on Reaper of Souls, and this expansion took a really talented team, put a lot of passion into it, but we also drew a lot of inspiration from our very awesome community.
We're super excited to give you this behind-the-scenes look at Reaper of Souls and how it all came together.
So Reaper of Souls introduces a brand new setting to the players, the city of Westmarch, which is like the gothic and military powerhouse of the world of Sanctuary. And from a development standpoint, it presented a really interesting challenge because this is the first time in a Diablo game where we have a fully randomized urban environment. The team did a fantastic job at making the city of Westmarch come to life.
Westmarch is such a beautiful and believable city that I think you forget that it's completely random. And we'd like to share with you a little bit of the unique approach that we took in creating this.
The Angel of Death has sent his Reapers to Westmarch, and they're slaughtering innocents in the streets.
The city of Westmarch has been sitting around the edges of Diablo game lore for forever.
It seemed like a good place for gameplay as well as storytelling.
We actually started looking into the idea of building Westmarch before D3 shipped.
It's a place we've always wanted to go. Really, the only reason we haven't gone there is because we couldn't build it right.
Building a city is very hard.
It was going to be an epic undertaking, basically.
I think we had confidence that we could do it, but how do we get there?
When the player arrives in Westmarch, this once grand power has been almost instantly overrun and almost completely destroyed by Malthael, the Angel of Death, and his forces.
The city is one of the most powerful organizations on the planet, and yet they were completely unprepared for this supernatural assault.
He's basically unstoppable for normal people, and it takes a Nephilim, or you, the player, to be able to stop him.
No one can stop death.
The whole of Sanctuary is being devastated, and Westmarch is kind of the representative of that you get to see in the game.
And so we wanted to make sure that it was pretty scary place.
It's supposed to be overbearing and feeling like you're this small little person in a huge environment.
We wanted to make sure it was dark and dreary, and you wanted to be on edge the whole time because you never knew where a monster would come out from.
Everybody was on the same page with that part of it. We all kind of had this kind of old world gothic vibe.
We looked at a lot of reference for medieval cities in Europe from the Middle Ages.
It needs to be more believable and realistic. So we looked at a lot of movies and TV shows.
At even some layout of Jerusalem, because it's Middle Age type of ambience and style. We looked at this island off the coast of France called Saint Michel. It's an island with a big city on top of it. It has big walls, tons of buildings just kind of mashed together. It's a very, very old monastery. It's an old city that was looking pretty much what we're looking for.
When we started working on the expansion, we looked back at our production cycle and how long it took and how difficult it was to get all of the different departments talking together.
One of the traps that you can fall into is to put your blinders on and barrel down the path of finishing one thing till it's awesome. You may end up with a great thing that doesn't mesh with the other things you're making.
That stuff was pretty no-brainer. I mean, we learned a lot of lessons from the original game.
We knew that we wanted to change up the way that we worked a little bit. We went with a different type of production style. We went with a strike team production style.
We would get designers, artists, animators, everybody together in the same room to build this thing out all at the same time.
Developing a whole lot of related assets in parallel.
When you do a lot of back and forth, it's much quicker when you have everybody together.
And make sure that it was going to look awesome, it was going to play awesome, it was going to stay in line with what our vision of Westmarch was as a team.
The collaborative process for us, that's where things get exciting.
Trying a new process is not something that we're used to doing, so we kind of had to rearrange our thoughts and how we work.
So at some point, you always have a little bit of a fight. It's normal, it's good because it challenged the idea, you know?
So this was a really unique experience with everybody struggling together, figuring it out.
This expansion is like basically taking those lessons that we learned from the first one and just running with it.
You have to tell a story to folks when they first start in an area so that they understand what the situation is, where they're at.
I think one of the things we did in the original D3 was we over-explained.
Show, don't tell. So we could have a guy standing there reading some giant epic tale of Westmarch is on fire and blah, 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 and he could go through this whole thing. Or we could just paint this picture in front of you. Okay, I get it. When you stand over that overlook and you're looking down into Westmarch, you're like, I'm going to get down there and get it done.
I think it's a really important moment to see the city that way. It's a precursor. You kind of figure out what you're getting yourself into.
That's what we're really looking at in this game. We're like, you know, how much can we leave as a mystery? How much can we leave for the player to figure out for themselves and still have the player know where they're supposed to go and know what they're supposed to be doing?
We create a world. We create a world for the player and for the monsters that are going to populate the level or the dungeon that you're doing.
So when we start developing an area in the game, we take a look at what sorts of monsters will suit the environment.
The player's experience, since this is Act 5, is coming right off of having defeated Diablo. We couldn't have players come out of that heaven environment, killing the Lord of Terror, and then step in and start stomping rats.
We looked at the monsters that we had and tried to create a sense of epic proportions with them and make them a bit more formidable.
It's important in a game where a monster will only live for 3 seconds on screen before you're killing it, that its visual is striking.
To do that, we wanted to differentiate their silhouettes pretty strongly. You want to see at a glance, this is the ranged character, and this is the quick melee character, and this is the guy who's going to res people. We always talk about gameplay first, and it's important that you get that quick read right away.
Westmarch monsters are all tied into Malthael and Malthael's lieutenant Urzael.
Which meant we had to make them feel like Malthael and still make them feel different.
The theme is death. Death is everywhere in Westmarch.
One of the things that we didn't want to do was just do straight up Western, theology-inspired Grim Reapers and whatnot. Sanctuary is not Earth, and it does need to feel different, and we wanted something that was in the realm of death as we understand it, but still something that's evil, but feels different.
The tightrope we're trying to walk is we want horrific, grotesque-looking monsters, but at the same time they have to look angelic.
We had to kind of make some decisions about where they fell, and I think ultimately where we ended up, we have these characters that are kind of half dead, where he's taken the souls from some of the characters and he's left what's there to do his bidding.
The Westmarch monster kit is a real dark one. It's full of some real nasties. Things you feel really good about wiping out.
One of the challenges in making a city is trying to dial in something that feels realistic, that does feel like a city, but still fits Diablo gameplay.
From the very get-go, we sort of want to hit a bigger city, a sort of more metropolitan area than you've ever seen in Diablo before.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't just like a bunch of square city blocks. We wanted to make it so that It felt more natural. There was a more organic flow to some of the streets.
You want to go through buildings, you want to go down dark alleys, you want to descend stairways, you want cities that are multi-level.
So when we started working on layouts, we realized that we all had to pretend to be city planners because everything had to make sense, how the roads met each other, all the spaces in between buildings, the buildings themselves.
And one of our best tools is gray boxing.
Gray boxes are basically just rough geometry to kind of represent what you're shooting for in the future.
Very, very simple geometry in there, just so we can play it, we can say, is this working or not working?
Costs us very little. We could iterate on it very quickly, make big decisions that cost us minutes instead of weeks.
And I think that was very important in helping to figure out the sizes for the city.
So we spent a lot more time than you would think, dialing in the width of buildings and doorways and archways and city streets and alleyways.
Of course, we also had always to consider the camera angles. And you always think of cities as something that goes very high up into the air.
Whenever you have a tall object, the player gets behind the object, the player becomes hitting from the camera. Usually in those cases, what we do is we just fade the object.
But what we didn't want to do is have a lot of like foreground fading, just have buildings like popping in and out.
Yeah, we always want the player to be able to see, this is my barbarian, this is my wizard.
Our artists actually came up with some very clever ways by having rooftops slant in certain ways on certain streets and trying to limit that as much as possible. At the same time, selling this large city feel. By the end of that early prototype, we felt like we were there, and then we could go on to like some early art prototyping of it.
Well, we had this idea to come up with a 3D concept, which is basically an end-game target look for the city.
And we would apply those concepts on a texture sheet, so we can easily throw it on a model.
So we did that. We put some lights in there, we put the concepts directly on there.
And then we dressed it up with props, things like crates, barrels, all that fun stuff.
The whole process was going faster and easier, and making changes was easier.
And it turned out, hey, we like this look, we like the way this is going.
But also it helped us figure out that we had way too much wood in the city.
It just started feeling like a village, like, oh, you're just sort of strolling through a village. And that was definitely not the feel we wanted for Westmarch.
So we had to continually strip out things like wood and bushes.
They always had to have that edge where it would feel like people had lived here, but I don't want to live here.
We included a little bit more stone to it, and it absolutely started moving towards a more metropolitan feel.
Which is very apparent in a medieval city, is everything is stone. I mean, everything is literally stone.
And we went back and forth a long time over that, actually.
Finding that perfect ratio of wood to stone was a pretty tricky thing.
Probably one of the biggest lessons that I took away from the vanilla game into going on Westmarch was just the randomization.
In D3 vanilla, the exteriors were not random.
We had a philosophy behind that. We wanted people to have a certain amount of predictability. But on reflection, we decided that we got more out of having random environments anywhere we could.
Having a random layout lets players experience a game in a new way every time that they roll it up.
This was the kind of the edict for the whole game.
In fact, anytime we think about building any kind of level that's not going to be random, no, it's going to be random. Figure out a way, because this city would have been much, much easier to build if it was like a custom city.
When we first started doing this, I found it was really hard.
So the way our system works is we build all of the game on squares.
And inside that square holds an appearance. Appearance is basically the geometry. It also holds marker sets. Marker sets are the things that hold lights, vectors.
So when those squares meet up against each other, those are different scenes. Throughout the game, they're all just different scenes that are pieced together like a big puzzle piece.
And every scene has a certain dimension.
Typically, they are 120 by 120 feet that set up the main level flow. We also have 240 by 240 feet. 240s tend to be set pieces or event rooms that we kind of sprinkle in.
These are real easy to work with. They're large enough where you can create a fun event in them, but they're not so big that it's just, you can have trouble like walking from one side to another.
Any environment that we build, the scope is determined by the type of level it's going to be. So we have different types of level. We have small caves, 15 to 20 scenes, medium-sized dungeons or levels, and those are about 40 scenes. And then we have our large ones, and those can go anywhere from 60 to 200 scenes. We knew it was going to take longer to build these scenes, these city scenes. So, and in the end, we were shooting for about 80 scenes or so.
Every square inch of that city had to have tons of buildings.
We wanted to make each city block feel different.
To do that, just the physical manpower of getting that accomplished meant that we had to go to a component system.
Breaking down a building into basic pieces. So we have like the first floor, the second floor, the roofs, and then add-ons. Add-ons are basically just things like doors and windows and chimneys, things that go on top of the buildings.
Well, not every building is the same shape and size. So we had to basically create a very complex library of assets, lots of different versions of, different bases and things like that.
Once we kind of had a basic plan of how we were going to build the components, we needed a quick way to visualize it and see if it was even going to work or not. So I remember when I was a kid, I had this mix and match book, and each page was divided into 3 sections. I thought that would be an interesting approach for our buildings because it would allow us to quickly see what a roof looks like on another type of building.
And then you can put these things together in any combination of ways, and suddenly like the building feels like a different place.
And when we go random, any of those scenes can roll next to the next scene at any time. So you're always guessing, and you're always wondering what's going to be around the next corner.
I think what was most challenging is we were attacking an exterior environment, but basically creating it in the way that we would do dungeons.
So we use a system called the DRLG, and that stands for Dynamic Random Level Generator. And what that is a system that takes in a number of tiles, and then the designer will set up an algorithm, and that will define how the tiles roll.
And then that basically places all these scenes in different configurations so that the level's different each time it rolls.
They can line up in any different number of ways. So our first challenge is to make rooms that can all connect together.
The trick with that for a city is you have to have all your roads connect. So we don't want to have one scene have a road and then all of a sudden it just ends and it just goes to nowhere. So we had to make sure that all the roads kind of ended in like a gate or looped around or whatever.
The most important thing about building a scene is you have to make sure that it's not recognizable. And kind of generic, basically. Because if you do a scene with an epic statue in it, and that scene rolls right next to it itself, which it could, because anything can go anywhere, you're going to be, hey, there's that same scene, there's that same one again. So we have to basically build these things so that it's interesting, but not overly interesting.
Some of the stuff we're still struggling with, we want to have story moments, we want to have events, and those happen in specific rooms. The more unique rooms you have in a map, the less randomization you're going to have.
We created a certain number of tiles as a base, and then we went back in and layered on top of that a number of unique tile sets. Once the area is defined, we decide, given the size of the space, how often we want interior rooms to roll.
In this process, we decided that we needed a lot more sub-scenes and interesting focal points when you're walking, so it's not just big, boring city.
You can spend a lot of time in something, and no matter how cool it is or how much you like it, it still gets kind of stale after a while.
One of the ways we handle that is doing things like cellars or interiors. So you go through a door or a portal, as we call it, and you're in a different world.
I want to add that feeling that there could be a lot more to the city, that like it could keep on going beyond the area that you're in.
We've got so many houses that we're now able to say there's 50, 60 points inside this one world that a seller could load at.
So the first time you go to that scene, the door could be open. It could lead into an interior. The next time you go to the scene, it could just be closed.
It could spawn that's walled in with bricks. It could spawn with it's barred or it's like rickety and you could break it. Monsters could kick out the door and jump out at you.
Beyond like each one of these scenes, then we go in and we set up all of these different components within the world.
We use a system called gizmo distribution, which will drop down anything that's clickable, whether it's a chest, corpse.
We put them all over the world. When the game rolls that dungeon, it places all these things in the world for you.
But it doesn't mean that it will roll. It's more of a spot that we predefine. And then on a meta level, we can go in and say how often we want that stuff to roll.
All these things can be placed in different spots, and it can make it feel fresh and different each time.
I think that the environment team was extremely successful in this, and I think that people will be able to run through this environment hour after hour without ever seeing the same tile combination twice.
I can honestly say the Westmarch area was the first time where I really ran through that area thinking this hits that core feeling that I'm looking for when I'm thinking about the Diablo franchise.
This is what Diablo is all about. This is the gothic feel that Diablo just portrays.
Well, we were definitely taking on things that we had never done with the Diablo series.
It was a very difficult thing to put together. It took us a long time to put this city together, to get it to the point where it felt right.
There was a lot of stuff that didn't work out in the first pass. There was monsters we threw out. There were gameplay functions that didn't work. We just kept plugging away, asking ourselves, is this the experience we want to have when we're playing?
It was a struggle from the beginning. But that's how we do things at Blizzard. We figure it out. We work through those things. And all that stuff added up. It made it work.
Music is a really key element of Diablo. I think everybody can remember the first time they heard the guitar strum at the beginning of Diablo 1. And since then, music has done a lot to really provide the tone and the feel and the atmosphere of our game.
When we first get to see the game on the screen, there's no sound. And when Derek and his team drop in the sound effects and the music behind it, it's like a whole new game for us. And you realize how much the emotion and the tone and the feel of the game is dependent on that music. So we're really happy to share with you Derek Duke and his amazing sound team and some of the wizardry that they've put behind the sounds in Reaper of Souls.
The piano plays a super crucial role to me because it's an instrument that allows me to imagine everything better. I mean, there's a reason it's lasted the test of time, because it's very easy for me to play something here and use my imagination and know what it's going to sound like. Things that inspire me the most are the game. Like, there's the story of what's happening and just all this artwork in the game, all this history being written. In my mind, it's a very real place and it's very, very real events, and the fact that there's a musical score to that, I guess, that's where the suspension of disbelief comes in. So that you've got on the solo violin and the piano, and then the orchestra comes in. It's really pretty and emotional when you hear the version we did in Seattle. So we've been working on, I've been working on the music for D3 expansion since original Diablo shipped. I met with Brian Kinnergan, the lead writer, and Kevin Martin to talk about story points, what we might want to focus on, a little bit of a post-mortem and where we're hoping to go, some of the broad strokes of what we thought, what their ideas were for the expansion and what we'd like to do.
When we started on this expansion, I think some of our key goals for the music were to evoke the different mood and the different feel and somehow tap into the fact that you're now fighting death.
When Diablo 3 ended, it ended on a high note. The angels and the humans were going to work together and bring light back to the world and fight the demons and the forces of darkness, and everything was a bright, brave new world. Well, when we started the expansion, we wanted that to sour very quickly. We wanted to go for a much grimmer, more tense feel.
People being slaughtered in the streets, there's death everywhere. We're really trying to tap into the gothic horror feel and make sure that we stay in touch with Diablo's dark roots.
That was about the time when they started moving the sound designers to embed with Team 3. The opportunity presented itself for me to have a place over there as well, so I moved from my office in the sound department, our central development area, to a room actually sitting on the team where I'm creating the music for the Diablo 3 expansion right there in the middle of the whole team.
Having them embedded on the team means that the audio in general and the scoring in particular are a really deeply embedded organic part of the play experience.
Whether people are hearing my stuff that I'm working on every day through the wall, there's something about sitting on the team where everybody is, living and breathing Diablo. We're all there and everybody's focused every hour of every day on that universe. Maybe 4 to 5 months after that we had our first orchestral session and just sort of test the waters.
My name is John Kurlander, and I'm the music recording engineer and mixer for Diablo 3 expansion. I'm basically head of the technical team and take on the technical responsibility of the whole gig. That involves designing the layout of where all the musicians go, the chairs, and if there are any risers or rostrum, and where everybody sits, and what mics we use, and where we put them.
My name is Emer Noon. I'm the orchestral conductor for the Diablo 3 expansion. My role is to take the score and the creativity that the composer has put on paper, interpret it, and communicate it to the orchestra, whilst working with the recording engineer to make sure we have the technical capabilities to bring about the sounds that this composer has created in his imagination.
As far as the setup of the orchestra goes, a lot of the times when we're recording video game music, it's often with some electronic elements like drums and synthesizers and samples. And so I've developed a technique pretty much of a very 21st century symmetrical layout, and everything is designed to be as symmetrical sounding as the samples are, and it works like that. So when I first met with Derek, we planned to do that, and he was pretty happy about that's where you're going to go.
When we got up to Seattle for the first session, we finally had the orchestra books, the actual musical books with the entire score printed out. And Emer flew in, John had flew in. We sat down, just have a drink, and map out how the session was going to go the next day. When John started looking through the score, it struck him that, this really looks like classical music.
I actually said at the meeting, I think that I've done the wrong setup for this.
We all thought, this needs a special treatment. We're going to go very old school with this.
He had this idea maybe we should record the orchestra a little more like we record classical music.
We hadn't set up anything at all yet, so we could change it, and we changed it to a very legitimate classical setup.
Out came the pens and papers, and he started drawing on the paper. Pretty soon he had gone back to his room, got out his laptop, and started moving around the chairs and the microphones in the way he does.
We spent hours debating where everybody sits, and to an outsider that might be the most anally retentive conversation you've ever heard. To us, we absolutely live for it.
The setup that we used up in Seattle for this was for 83 musicians. A traditional classical setup, all the violins on the left, piano and harp behind them on full left, violas and cellos and basses on the right, woodwinds in the middle, and then behind the woodwinds were the French horns. Then off to the right were the trombones and the trumpets in the back, and then the percussion, timp on half left and percussion behind them. We're also going to do another thing, which is record the choir live with the orchestra, which is in video game scoring virtually unheard of.
People don't do it that way because they don't have the confidence of being able to control things later. Whereas we actually get the time to really make it work in the moment. It makes the whole performance more organic and more cohesive.
It's definitely a different sound having an entire orchestra together rather than recording them in different pieces. The sound a bass drum makes when it reverberates inside of all the other instruments, the emotional tension of the string players waiting while the wind players and the brass players play their section. Even the silence, when just maybe a few instruments are playing, you tend to hear all those players being silent, and it's just a different kind of energy.
Blizzard uses a very iterative process in making its games. And so, in that same vein, when Derek gets home with these tracks, he'll add instruments that maybe weren't practical on the orchestra stage. Everything from his modular synthesizers to some incredible toys that Joseph Lawrence brought over, and they're like the greatest mad scientists in the world, creating these otherworldly sounds.
Today we're just making a lot of source material for use in all the different music that's coming up to blend it together with all the different elements that we pull together, including the orchestra and samples and all the things we do back at the office. So we're just making interesting textures to blend with all the music.
When I do the work for the orchestra, there's some of that music where I've left holes in this frequency range where it's like, okay, there's no brass during this place because actually there's an intention to fill it with a little more of the electronics or processed sound. Not that it would sound like a synthesizer, but that creepy sound that definitely has its genesis in the computer or in field recordings or those kind of things. Besides the sort of the drony, noisy ambience that you hear quite a bit in between different musical cues, the fingerboards play a big role for me. This is the Madrona Labs sound plane. It's all wood. This is a wood veneer covering some sort of surface that's way beyond my technical knowledge. What I've always liked these things for is experimentation and not relying on specific muscle memory and shapes that, my tendency if I go into the keyboard, my hand makes certain shapes, so I'm always making those same shapes with my hands, playing the same music. So I want to make sure that if I have an idea in my head, I have that worked out either before I come to the keyboard so that my fingers don't influence what I'm thinking of. This is actually where we bring the orchestra and the orchestral recordings. This is where we bring them into Sanctuary. This is where they get combined with the non-existing in real life acoustic instruments that meld together and make the music that fits in Diablo without taking you outside of Diablo.
Why? The Nephilim will stop you.
Derek and I have had a really collaborative relationship. He will invite me over to his office, usually on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and we'll have new things for me to listen to. Nice, man. Yeah, I think you just about got it. Can you play the first one again, too, where you come out of the 2D? We'll just sit down, play the tracks, with picture. Sometimes we'll actually turn everything off except the music and just try to evaluate what that is in and of itself. What would you think about just continuing the just a little bit longer and kind of fading it out,
Sure, like cross-fading into the guitars?
Yeah, just so it doesn't feel so abrupt. The score for the Diablo 3 intro hits a lot of interesting notes because the cinematic kind of rises and falls in different emotional ways. When we open, it's very ominous. It's almost like they're diffusing a bomb, It's like the soulstone we liken to plutonium. And then Malthael emerges from the shadows, and the score with the movie takes another turn into a very dark place, into a very ominous place. And from there, it's just sort of upping the ante, increasing the intensity of the experience. But even in that, we don't just stick with the dark Malthael theme. In the midst of all of that, Tyrael has the opportunity to save one Horadrim who will be the Horadrim that goes forth and brings the word to the player.
Go! Go! Find the Nephilim!
That particular transition has taken a whole lot of iteration. The front half is awesome, and then the next section is awesome, and then it's trying to figure out how to get from there to the other part. That's the real headache. That's the real puzzle. That's the challenge. And once we get on the stage and it's played, that's going to read really well and a little bit different than that. I had been having some thoughts, like after initial conversations and meeting with Mark, that we really wanted something to propel us forward. And he was specifically mentioning that, in regards to the intro cinematic, and I had been wanting that for the game, for something to propel us forward, something that we could come back to, that we could build on, something that would drive us.
This feeling of inevitability, that you were going to come to this end, no matter what you did, that Tyrael was destined to face Malthael in this context. So Derek started playing around with ideas for how to make that kind of theme work.
For me, at least in my mind, it's like, okay, this is this is based on the Horadric chant, something very, old and Gregorian, this simple descending line that just keeps going. So, and then that's your musical destiny. That's taking you on the journey through the expansion. So when we do our next recording session, we'll be mirroring that setup to create that continuum of the sound, that sort of evolution.
Blizzard Entertainment is, I think, very unique in that it's so core to everything we do, gameplay first. It's all about making the kind of games we want to play ourselves. We also treat the music that way. This is the music that we want to hear in the game that we would want to play ourselves. We have been using live orchestras now for pretty much every major release that we've done. And the reason is not just because we can, but because it sounds better. There's something about music that is being created, played by human beings.
So it's Sunday morning, and we're setting up for tonight's session. The session starts at 7 o'clock tonight, and I think it's about 12 o'clock now, so there's a lot of work to do. I'm nervous and excited.
I'm John. I do headphones and make sure all the microphones work. Nobody kicks them, they get pointed back in the right place, and they'll get sent the right gain back to the back. So I'm kind of the stage manager out here, jack of all trades. My problem I'm solving right now is usually I'm kind of down in the middle of the floor, so everything kind of spider webs out from the center. And today they've got me hiding over here in the corner because we got the choir and a bunch of other stuff out there. So I have to rerun all my cables that are different lengths to different places and figure out new paths to get there that aren't going to interfere with the 80 people in their chairs with their $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 instruments that you don't want them to trip over the cable that you're running. You know, those little things like that.
So here's one that might be good. This is Mystique. So this kind of goes through a lot of different things.
Derek has come up with a lot of unique articulations and alternate ways of performing on the instruments that you don't normally hear. So Emer and Derek are now going over each one page by page.
Yeah, so flute 1 picks one of these and plays and plays another one and plays another one. And
so they choose any one of these in any order they like.
The most important thing with the players is that they choose it and they commit to it.
Right.
That's like, I don't want anybody being wishy-washy about what they're.
Right, and it's kind of improvisatory.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. These things should just start happening, and so we know that it's structured like this.
Right.
But it should sound like it's absolutely meant to be.
Okay, that's going to be this is going to sound awesome.
I'm looking forward to hearing it.
The great thing about Derek's music is that he says everything in the score. This is an incredibly detailed piece of work. It's got subtleties that are so important that they're structurally important to the piece.
In the standard scores, we have regular musical notation that's timed to meters, like 4/4 or 3/4. You can see these meter changes, and then the notes follow a specific rhythm in a specific tempo. In this particular type of score, Derek has specified these random elements that go along with the standard notation. So here at bar 35, you have this 9-note sequence, which the players on the piano and the harp can play in any order, and they can play it at any speed, but it goes along in the same, meter and everything, but it's not following the meter. So when you take that a step further, some of the cues have evolved to a place where all of the notation is this box notation. So you have these sections here where the choir comes in, is doing this phrase inside this bracket and repeating it at random, while this is also happening at random. And you see up here, these cue points, these arrows, are conductor notes where Emer will conduct the entrance point of a new event. So instead of having a time signature that's 1, 2, 3, 4, you have an event that lasts as long as the conductor determines, and then she cues a new event.
If we see something that seems like in another score might seem like it's just a passing and nothing, in Derek's music it can be a monumental part of the journey, taking us structurally where we need to go, because that's the way he thinks.
This is a very exciting time for us because I think that this expansion is just inherently more expressive, more musical. And you've probably sat in the audience in a musical performance and found yourself transported. And video games now do that. This is, I think, the very definition of art. And video games very much are art. They are experiences, total sensory, immersive experiences. By composing this music very carefully and very deliberately, and by working with Emer and John Kurlander, the scoring mixer, and then all these just amazingly talented musicians, we can wring every last bit of story and immersion and experience and effect out of this gameplay.
It is June 16th at approximately 6:25 p.m. on our very first day of recording. Are we ready?
We're ready.
Russell?
We're here. Whatever happens, there's some great music happening tonight and tomorrow and the day after that.
I haven't grown my beard yet.
You have to grow a beard. That's part of the game.
I see that.
Part of the requirements.
Some of you were here last fall around Halloween where we did the first session of this. So again, This is all done, aside from our cinematic we'll be working on tomorrow, is all done without click. This is all about making the most of what you guys bring as musicians to this project, so I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Just strings first.
Joe Rob. Tune. Let's take a look.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So I'm going to give you bar 1, and we're in on bar 2, brass. Ready?
This is take 1.
Ah, that works. Okay, this is take 1. What we're doing is a recording of a performance. You may as well be on stage. You may as well have an audience. It's a recording of a performance. So yes, it makes a huge difference. It's more of a joy. It's more complicated. It's one of those things that in the moment you let go of all technical and you go with the instinctive. We knew that the nuances and the level of detail had to be there, but also that it couldn't be constricted or restricted by a click track.
Practically every movie and video game now is recorded to a click track, whereas ordinary classical recording is not. It's all done on what we call the stick, which is the baton that the conductor uses. And it's completely different art.
This is where we go away from the robotic digital age and we do things in a very human way.
So just to quickly go over, this is a piece about the 7 evils and birth from 7 heads, causing death and destruction cycle upon cycle, just an unending cycle of creation and dissolution of the universe. There's sort of a underlying sacred tone to some of this because the Nephilim or the human player in our universe is someone who is basically created out of the mating of an angel and a demon. So I think that's enough talking, and let's get to it. Thank you all. The Diablo orchestra sounds as though it still comes from the past. It's not quite as in your face, it's not quite as shiny. It's a way of being, steeped in tradition, yet still trying to find a vibe.
Derek is definitely somebody who's excited about hearing different opinions on his work and how to bring about the sounds that he has very clearly in his imagination.
You make the non-traditional stuff sound ordinary. It is anything but ordinary.
Yes, I always forget that people, to me, it sounds so gorgeous and absolutely normal, and that other people don't hear it the way I do. I have to be careful not to assume too much, because otherwise, the game wouldn't communicate to enough people.
No, it sounds Diablo-tastic, though. The non-traditional stuff. It is that world for sure. And it is inside of Derek's head. We're not quite sure that's a good thing, but it sounds good.
A lot of the music that Derek has written for this expansion is more intimate, if you will, than the last round we did with Diablo 3.
He has the confidence compositionally to write large expansive thoughts that are slow and slowly developing over time but have an incredible payoff.
And that's because the storyline is much more focused on the experience of the hero. When you enter a new space, you're very alone. And the orchestra, it gets smaller. You might hear solo violin and solo piano or something a lot more intimate. He's saving the full power of the orchestra for the biggest moments, and suddenly the sound explodes.
End of day 2. They're little black dots in front of my eyes, but of course they're musical black dots. It was a long day, a great day, a worthwhile day, and we did some really weird stuff.
This expansion definitely has its own flavor, its own sound, and Derek maintains that through his mind and through his pencil and through his keyboards onto the printed page, and then these wonderful musicians make it audible.
Derek's idea of recording the score in this way was very daring, and it's something, as I said, that is not usually done for video games. And he was taking a lot of responsibility for it on an experimental idea that it would really enhance the action in the game with something that was so real and organic and earthy, that was really from a different world. And I really think that it was a very brave step and very courageous, and will pay great results.
So that's day 3, first night, choir and orchestra. Got it tuned in, dialed in, and it's really exciting. Everybody's really happy with the way it sounds. I am also happy. So that's a good thing. 2 more days, choir and orchestra, then all the pickups, separate percussion section, and different things to mix in with the cinematic. Another choir only, just get some versions that we can mix whatever sounds we want when we get back to the campus. And that's it. We'll be ready to head home and start putting the stuff in the game.
It's kind of interesting how this process evolves with this team, and it starts out with a team of 1, that's Derek, and then it expands out a little more where he might tap myself or Jason Hayes or Glenn Stafford for a melody for a character or an event. And then suddenly we have a room full of musicians, and we've got Emer conducting them, and we have John recording them, and then we come back home and it's back down to 1 again. And what's cool about that is that Derek provides that common thread that, in the end, makes the soundtrack to this game sound cohesive. It fits the singular design and art direction of the game in a way that happens best when this wonderful group of people rally around one idea with a musical director, Derek, who he keeps the faith. You know, he makes this thing into what he imagined it to be, and you wind up with a soundtrack that belongs nowhere else but with this game, with this expansion, with this franchise. And that way, when you listen to it again, it'll be something you'll never forget.
yes, I am making the music that I want, that I want to hear in the game. Yeah, obviously, because there's no other way. There's no other choice. The most important thing at any point in the process is keep in mind the game. It's all about the game. And we trust that doing that is what our fans want. They want us to do the very best, so we do that. That's what's given the music the potential to be as great as hopefully it is when all is said and done and actually the players have it in their hands on their screens.
So we can't talk about community without talking about cosplay, and the work and the passion and dedication that these people put into their costumes is awe-inspiring. It's one thing to see a character on screen. It's an entirely different thing to see the same character in real life.
I had no idea how much work went into these costumes. I mean, we literally went all over the world filming cosplayers and what goes into making these costumes, and it's incredible, the amount of effort, and we're really happy to bring you this next segment.
Diablo was my first gaming love. It brought me into gaming. It truly brought me into gaming.
I was a Diablo 2 player, so I was really excited for the new game.
It was the perfect game to play cooperatively with my friends. I still get cravings to play.
I know many people who create great costumes from Diablo 3. I'm able to find people who share my passion with me and also love the characters I love, and I think that's the best and the great aspect of the community.
Look out, Norton!
Cosplay is a way for fans to show their dedication and fandom to the companies and franchises that they're fans of.
Cosplay is a kind of art to bring a fictional character to life. This means a character from video games, anime and manga, movies, books, everything.
Sometimes it's an item, a robot. Sometimes it's even food. It could be anything, really.
Some of them are very simple, and others are more elaborate, going as far as prosthetics to achieve their look.
It's anything that involves dressing up in a costume. Even Halloween is technically cosplay.
I really love to create the costumes from Diablo 3. I won a costume contest at Gamescom with a Diablo 3 costume. Bye-bye, Gamescom! My favorite piece I created from Diablo 3 is a sword I call Glowai's Gift. It's from the Bavarian artwork from Wei Wang, alias Glowai. It's a pretty big sword, and I really love it because it has a lot of details and it's pretty big and massive.
My favorite Diablo costume that I've worked on so far is the wizard that I made last year. I have a couple costumes in the works right now, and I'm kind of eyeballing the Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter is just completely badass.
My favorite is definitely my heavy Demon Hunter set. The entire thing was hand-tooled out of raw leather. It's not plastic, it's not even cloth. Everything is leather except for the pants.
My favorite Diablo piece has to be the Mistress of Pain. I debuted it several years ago at BlizzCon. It was an adventure to make, an adventure to get to California, and very, very much my favorite. Decision-making on a costume, it has to work for me physically and imaginatively, I have to be drawn to the design as well. So in the example of the Mistress of Pain, she was so grand and She was horrifying but beautiful.
For me, a lot of times it's characters that I play or that I love the design. And I'm sure a lot of cosplayers play a character or they see a concept and all of a sudden it clicks. They're like, I have to make that.
Usually something catches my eye and I just sit there and fixate on it for a while. This is Legendary Weapon Valinir that I made to go with my Priest tier set. This is what I made because there was no way I would ever get this in the game. It's completely artistic instead of trying to think about what will win a contest or get the most attention at an event.
I decide basically on the reference art. If a reference has many details, a big armor, a big prop and everything, I say, I want to make you. You see, pretty huge, pretty bulky, and pretty raw, massive. I love it.
My favorite part of the cosplay process is once you've decided a character that you want and that excitement, you start researching and then you start planning. And I often can talk about hours, just like ideas. How am I going to do this? What am I going to do? What material? How am I going to make this thing attached to my back? These huge wings or whatever it is.
I gotta say the hardest part of the costume was actually the spider legs and the abdomen. The mechanics of the legs, how it was going to be held to me and how it was going to make it across the stage without falling to bits. Assembly for the costume took a greater part of a year. It was a lot of taking it to work with me. At the time, I was a flight attendant, so I was taking parts of the costume with me on the plane and actually sewing on the plane to get this costume done because time was of the essence.
Lorraine Torres is the grand winner, the Mistress of Pain.
It was incredibly rewarding to find out I won. I actually burst into tears the moment it was announced, and you couldn't even see it because my mask was absorbing the tears, so.
How do you must feel great, right?
Yeah, very good. One of the most, hands down, incredible moments, yeah.
For me, the most rewarding thing is actually getting to meet the developers for the games that I make the costume for. And just seeing their reaction and how appreciative they are is so fulfilling. I love it so much.
Some of my favorite moments are the times that I spend backstage with other cosplayers because you have the newcomers who are really nervous and you just try to talk them down and reassure them. Then you also had the vets, so you could sit there and talk shop the whole time, talk about techniques and just trade stories.
Convention day is probably the worst day and the best day for me. Best because I'm showing off the costume, but worse if I'm not done with something, which is usually the case.
Cosplay is pretty exhausting. The prop I wore at BlizzCon had about 10 pounds and I carried it over 10 hours. I wanted to participate in the costume contest and also in the dance contest. The only proof that I was on stage was a video on YouTube. I had to totally black out, and in spite of that, it was pretty nice because I managed to wear this costume at the end.
We as cosplayers make enormous sacrifices just to give other convention goers like a show. The steps involving design with a costume, you have to start out with drawing. This is before you touch fabric, before you even buy anything. Just sit down with a piece of paper and figure out how this would happen in real life. After that, it's a lot of scouting up materials. Is it better to use fiberglass or is it better to use some leather? And then, of course, pattern making, which is a huge deal. They don't make patterns for this kind of stuff that cosplayers make. It takes a lot of time. It's grueling and it's, it can be annoying, but it's such a huge payoff when you do it. Everything fits together properly. You're not wasting material, which is a big deal. And then finally, it's just straight up construction and getting things done. And that's where a lot of cosplayers, end up in the final countdown, so to speak. We literally put blood, sweat, and tears, I kid you not, into each of our costumes. And you ask any cosplayer that and they'd be able to tell you the exact same thing.
Usually my workspace is pretty messy, and when I'm in my full work mode, you are even not able to see the ground of my room anymore because everything just lay around. It's very unorganized and very dirty and stuff.
Honestly, I use my entire apartment for my workspace. I try to keep everything really nice and tidy, but it definitely takes over my apartment when I get started.
A lot of times I'll start on the table with the best intentions, and then it will start to sprawl across the entire living room. By the time a costume is done, the house is pretty much destroyed.
A warning for whoever lives with a cosplayer, just be prepared for the mess. They're not doing it to upset you. We will eventually clean it up.
I really dream about a job in, in prop making or in, special effects and stuff. I would love to create costumes and props for movies. Well, maybe not. You will see.
I'm gonna continue making costumes as long as I can. I like to do commissions as well, so like if one day I decide I don't want to dress up anymore, well, I'll continue doing it, but through other people.
For me, cosplay will always just be an artistic hobby. These are all just sculptures to me, so I look at them as artistic pieces. It has a lot of special meaning to me, and it just makes me even more motivated to put that passion into my cosplay.
I couldn't ask for a better community. Through cosplaying, I've met an enormous amount of friends.
It's cool to see these people on a regular basis at events. It's the games that keep us together, not just being social.
If you upload a photo of your new costume and somebody on the end of the world says, "Oh my God, I love it," that's amazing.
People are just still so pumped. There's constantly new cosplay coming out. There's so much fan art. And I think that momentum is just going to keep the game alive.
So one of the fun things about making an online game is the global community that grows up around it. And in particular, the streamers are a very vocal and an energetic group.
The passion they have for the game, I think, is infectious on so many levels. I think our first exposure to them is actually watching their streams, but in the clip you're about to see, and we get to know them and we get to see a lot of the sort of great work that they're doing from a charity standpoint. That it's just fantastic to see that enthusiasm they have for the game, the passion, and the way they're inspiring other gamers and players.
I think it's cool that they just kind of put it all out there. They're not afraid to get in front of a camera and bring people in to play the game with them and even inspire each other. So this next segment is all about the streamers.
Really cool event. It's going to start at 8 a.m.
It's actually pretty nice. It's really nice.
I always end up managing to break records, and the reason why I'm able to do that.
I was the biggest Diablo 2 man. I waited so long for Diablo 3, and when it came out, I was like so ecstatic. Yeah!
When Diablo 3 came out, basically the first few weeks, I didn't get much sleep because I was playing the game so much.
If it wasn't for Diablo 3, I probably never would have started streaming.
The reason why I stream Diablo 3 is because it's just a much more powerful medium to reach out to people, to connect with people, to have fun with people, and also at the same time raise money for good causes.
I do not want to go anywhere near that elite pack. That is, I'm sorry, Mikey and Noble, that's up to you guys. I'm just gonna hang out back here.
Streaming is something that has been blowing up lately.
Live streaming is where someone plays video games with their screen being shown to anyone who wants to watch.
You actually have an audience checking in on the internet.
Typically, we'll also have a webcam on there so they can watch the person playing the game.
They can just go on the website and they will see me play, and they will actually stream the video.
People all over the world come and see like your funny commentary, your gameplay if you're really good. Maybe I'm not that good. I think they more come for me for my commentary and all that.
There's also a chat feature, so people watching can chat along. They can ask questions to the person playing games and get responses back.
Many players are new to the game and have questions, and the streamer usually answers the questions. Sometimes, for example, if people ask me something on my stream, I don't even need to answer because someone of the chat already answered the question before me.
A lot of games, especially in Diablo 3, viewers will come in and actually play with the person streaming a lot of times. There'll be events.
You just go, you can see people live. You're just into the game. If people lose, they lose right now.
So it's a lot of fun to watch. Anything could happen at any time. You might have a couple hundred people watching you play on hardcore, and a lot of them are hoping you don't die. A lot of them are hoping you do die just because they kind of want to see that happen, but it makes for a really exciting experience. It really brings the community together in a way.
It's basically like a giant social network.
Oh no! I got stuck in a corner.
Is it stream up now? I don't know if it's up or not. I'm back. Yeah, I'm alive. How you guys doing? Friends I knew started streaming, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm always playing video games. Hey, who wants to do some team play? We'll do some team play. And then I was like, okay, I think I could do this. You're hiding. You're talking in chat right now. You're not hiding. Don't lie to me. It's fun to watch me, I think. I would like to think that. Okay, so I'm gonna open up a raffle right now for you guys. And we're gonna do some team play. Tokens, raffle, open, 1, 2, 1. Finally, I was like, okay, I wanna do it full time. Like, I'm gonna try to stream every single day, trying to like put a commitment, have a stream schedule. And it just blew up from there. I got like so much support and all that, and my stream's grown. What's up, Gomez? How's your night, man? I met people online that, you know, live close to me, and I met up with them, and we're close friends now, like Archon.
Yoshi, come here. And Yoshi and me rest a little bit. She likes to hang out here and torment my other dog, Akina, who's scared right now, hiding upstairs. Hey guys, how's it going? What's good afternoon in German? Guten Afternoonen.
When I met him, like, he was doing like a giveaway on Twitch for like 1 billion gold, and like people on my channel, they're like, yo, go check out this guy, he's giving out 1 billion gold. I'm like, what?
When you start streaming, it's really hard to get viewers. No one knows who you are. No one has a good reason to watch you. We did whatever we could to make the stream more entertaining, to be as helpful as we can for viewers. Diablo 3 really lends itself to events and giveaways.
Welcome to Inferno Friday. This week we have giveaways. That's it. We just have a ton of giveaways.
So I like went over his channel, I entered. I'm just like streaming, and everyone's like, mods, you want to like get away, you trolls? I don't believe you. And then they're like, no, you really won. I'm like, what? I won? Holy what the yeah! Oh my god! I like did a victory dance around my room, like, yeah! I'm like, upgrades. And I met Archon that way. I'm like, we like went on his Mumble, and I was talking to him, you know, I won the giveaway, and he's like, oh, where do you live? I'm like, Las Vegas. He's like, me too. So I'm like, that's pretty sweet. And then, yeah, we've been friends ever since, so it's super cool.
Oh no, oh no. Oh, damn it. No. Ah, I died.
You really died?
Yeah.
Oh, look, you guys were telling me to go quicker. I'm like, slow and steady.
You were right.
To my surprise, I've formed real friendships on Diablo 3. I have people that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I call my friends. I would trust them with anything. We've met up in real life with a lot of them. And it's really cool to see this community grow where people identify themselves as viewers of a specific channel. And people want to hang out with other people in the community just because they both watch the same channel.
I met people all over the world, so that's really cool.
My name is Philip Carbon. In-game I'm known as Moldran. I'm studying business administration at the Vienna University of Economics and Business. I started studying because I wasn't sure if I'm always going to be able to have gaming as a full-time job, but currently I'm looking forward to make this my full-time job. And there are already many things where I can combine my business knowledge with gaming. Studying economics helped me a lot with the auction house in Diablo 3. I was able to make many guides, how to use it effectively. I'm gonna share this with you. I'm gonna show you quickly how it works. Diablo has always been a game where it's interesting to find legendaries, to identify them, and it's really fun if you do that in front of 2,000 viewers. For example, people can also tell you, okay, this item is good, this item is bad, I want this item, and then you can directly sell it to them.
I think more so than other games on Twitch.tv, a community grows a lot more organically in Diablo 3 because it's so easy to help each other. It really facilitates that. All the items can be shared. It really quickly became viewers were donating items to the channel, and then we could use those items to give to other people, and it just becomes this hub of people helping each other out, really.
I think the biggest reason why I like to do it is I like to help people. Like a lot of people like uninformed about like what's happening in the game. They don't know like how to build the characters. They don't know what to do. And I like build sets for them to like get into the games. Like I can't do anything. I died to like this white mob. I'm like, okay, bro, I got you. I'll get you some gear. Give me that gold.
In Diablo 3, it's a lot more fun if you cooperate with others, talk to others, share knowledge and so on. And in the end, everyone profits. Everyone is able to enjoy the game more and have more fun.
Thanks guys for helping out other people.
A couple months after I started streaming, one of my friends from the stream told me about this website, extralife.org. Extralife.org raises money for children's hospitals around the world through gaming. We started a team on Twitch.tv called Stream for Charity, and it's me, DatMods, a lot of the streamers. We really like that we can game with a purpose. We're playing video games, we're hanging out, but we're also doing a lot of good. And it makes us feel a lot better about just sitting around playing video games all day.
This past year, my grandfather had cancer, and he was basically like, they said he was done for. And we went out to Florida, and he was like on his deathbed, and they were gonna, pull the plug. The doctor said he had a 100% chance because he was on life support that he wouldn't make it. And when they pulled the plug, he just kept on going. Like, he did not give up. Like, he just pulled through. Like, nowadays, he's walking again, he's moving around, he's doing fine. And the doctors basically don't know how it happened. And so that's basically when Archon asked me, they're like, oh, do you want to do a cancer charity? I'm like, dude, 110%, I'm down. I'm down, let's do it.
Diablo 3 was able to help us raise a lot of money. People were allowed to donate gold to help the charity, and then we would use that gold to do what we called crafting for charity. Anyone who donated to Extra Life would get crafted gloves or helms or whatever they wanted in exchange for their donation, and that money came from the gold that was donated from other viewers. And using that system, we were able to raise about $15,000 for Extra Life from our channel, and we became the #2 fundraiser that year.
And they sent us like this cool little thank you note and like these dice, and it has like the personal logo, and it's like thanking you for like helping the kids out.
I've been astounded by how friendly gamers can be, how helpful gamers can be, and how charitable gamers can be. Athene is a great example of that.
Yeah, gamers represent. Yo, Athene here speaking out. People watching from all over the world. Come on, guys. Bring him them donations. Bring it on. I stream Diablo 3. I try to break records on the stream and entertain the viewers. Oh yeah, I like that. When I'm thinking about what achievements I will get, I always think like what the viewers want to see. Because the reason why I stream is because I raise money for charity, and I always try to engage the audience in what I do. So I'm not gonna try to go for boring achievements. I always try to get achievements that people really think are completely impossible. By doing so, I attract a lot of viewers, and by beating it, yeah, I really get people hyped up. You wanna see how I do it? You wanna see how I do it? Let's check this out. Yeah, what is this? 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 It's a thing. Eyes closed. Oh, he's dead. You see how my eyes closed? I break your record with my eyes closed. Is this gonna get front page on news sites? I hope so. 3 seconds. I kill Butcher in 3 seconds. The hardest achievement in Diablo 3 was by far killing Diablo on Monster Power 10, which is a very difficult mode, completely naked. Yeah, cool story, bro. So I used my Demon Hunter, and I only had a bow and a quiver, and I actually killed him naked, which was an almost 4-hour fight. I also did it on the live stream, and it really requires a lot of focus. One mistake and you're dead, and you have to start over again. World first. Diablo, goodbye. He's gonna die together with all them jelly haters. When I was doing that, I had almost 20,000 people watching. What you have is all the viewers coming together, watching the stream, enjoying the stream, and depositing themselves from their own money. I think when you just look at Diablo, we raised around $50,000 to $100,000 for Save the Children. It went to Mali, to Project in Mali in West Africa, where there was a severe drought, and basically it saved a lot of children. We went to Mali, we saw the programs. It's much more satisfying than anything else. I'll show you guys where they sleep. So they sleep just on the ground?
Yeah, sometimes, most of the time.
What's her name?
Her name is Tene.
How old is she?
She's 2 months old.
I mean, this is the face of the people you guys are saving. Sometimes when you game all day long, at some point you feel like you wanna do something more. What I want to do with gaming was I want to inspire people to actually get involved in game for good.
So far, we've raised over $10,000. In the last few years, gamers have really shown that we can do more than just sit around and play video games. Gamers really want to help out and be a part of something bigger than themselves. I will see you soon.
Honestly, my favorite part about Diablo is just interaction with people and just that whole social atmosphere. I think that's the biggest part of it.
It's fun being a part of the community, playing the game with other gamers, and just be able to hang out and talk while playing.
The community is growing and growing, and like streaming is getting more and more popular. There are always new players every day that find out about the streaming thing.
It's really cool to see people that play Diablo 3 to come together, have fun, and raise money for charity around the world.
On behalf of the development team, we hope you've enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls.
We want to thank a really dedicated team. They have poured blood and sweat and tears into making Reaper of Souls come to life, and the passion really shows through in the clips you just seen.
And to our community, you've played the game, you've given us your feedback, we've listened, and we hope you like what you see.
See you in Sanctuary.